Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in this world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, your moderator for the event, and I welcome you. We have a really interesting webinar on tap for today, but before we get started with that, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the webinar, you'll be able to access it on demand. Post-event, you'll be receiving an email that will have a link to the webinar that you can access. And we are taking questions from the audience, so at any time during the presentation you have a question for either of our panelists, please don't wait, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions, and we'll take probably around 10 minutes or so near the end of the presentation and go through those questions. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Scaling Your DevOps Team, Tips for Hiring Technical Talent. Our speakers today are Laura Guntrin, who's Director of Marketing at HackerRank, and Gaurav Verma, Vice President of Customer Success at HackerRank. Hi guys, thanks for joining me today.
Hello, good day. Thank you so much for having us.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Laura, I know you're going to be speaking first, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to you and let you do your thing.
Sure, great. Thank you so much. So yes, my name is Laura Guntrin, Director of Marketing at HackerRank. And today also with me is our VP of Customer Success. So Gaurav, you've got quite a bit of experience within the technical assessment and even the DevOps arena. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for having me and welcome everyone. So I've been with HackerRank now for over 18 months, running the customer success team. Prior to that, I was with EMC, and I had the opportunity to learn a lot about DevOps from a team that I had the opportunity to work with. I was running a DevOps team for one of our product lines there. It was a SaaS product, and it was an amazing team, and they taught me a lot about to really appreciate what DevOps as a philosophy and as a role and as a function and the skills that are needed to have a really good DevOps team in an organization.
Okay, great, thank you. And so today we'll be spending a little bit of time talking about best practices for hiring technical talent within a DevOps team. We'll spend a little bit of time taking a look at how people open up the top of their funnel, the evaluation process that we've learned to be best practices that organizations are using, and then finally tips and tricks for streamlining your application or your applicant experience. So taking a look at the top of the funnel, resumes. A lot of organizations today are still using the same traditional approach. They're combing through LinkedIn profiles, poaching through social media networks, and then pulling resumes into their system and scanning for particular keywords. And the challenges behind that is a lot of times resumes don't tell the whole story. For example, when you're looking to scale at your technical team, traditionally a rec is posted, people apply, the screen for those keywords, and you're looking for things like pedigree, experience, and there are a few skilled resume writers that are selected to move to the next round. And the trouble is that resumes don't really tell the whole story. Today, over 70% of developers are self-taught. People are participating in coding boot camps, hackathons, online coding challenges, plus there's YouTube, online tutorials are readily available. And then there's communities like the HackerRank community where people can go in and refine their skills, get feedback on problems that they're trying to solve. And so it's very difficult to convey these self-taught skills on a resume. Additionally, people can over or understate their technical skills, positioning themselves to be better qualified or underqualified for what they're actually capable of. And finally, resumes are notorious for inherently introducing bias. Just by looking at someone's name on a resume or where they live or their email address can trigger some unconscious biases and move somebody out of the consideration set unknowingly. However, recruiters and hiring managers are beginning to realize this, and as we all know, the way organizations hire today is beginning to shift. In fact, today, 3 out of 4 technical recruiters and hiring managers have said that they've hired a great candidate with a non-traditional background. So you don't have to have a computer science degree from a top school to be a good developer. And when we asked in our research what the 3 most important qualifications organizations look for before an on-site interview, both technical recruiters and hiring managers agreed that previous work experience is their top priority, 77%, followed by years of experience. And then finally, personal projects, so the time that people spend investing in their own education. On the flip side, more traditional skills like skills certifications or prestigious educations are ranking in the bottom half of the priority list. So the bottom line is hiring teams are much more interested in the proven skills and historic performance of a candidate more than they are in a candidate's pedigree. So as we look at the evaluation process, what are the core competencies employers look for? And so Bob, I'll hand this over to you. In your experience with our customers, you've been able to dive into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is some research based on the research we've done, but just looking at it, just my own experience of hiring or building teams around DevOps and cloud security and cloud security architects. What I found is that I was notorious for doing this too. I'd spend all of 10 minutes writing a job description and then expect magic from my technical recruiters to go get me the best candidates available. We all want to hire the best, of course. But we would focus and over-index on programming languages, things like what tools do you know how to use? We were a Cloud Foundry shop and we used Chef, or we were looking at Puppet or Ansible. And those were the kind of things that we tend to over-index on when we're writing job descriptions, versus really helping, what we're looking for is what, for a specific set of skills that best match the needs, right? And so and over 90% of hiring managers that we talk to and what we all care about is problem solving more so than that language for a tool, which are all teachable. If you know how to code in one language, picking up another language is really simple. We don't write every string and syntax anymore. You can go get the answer. Someone else has done the work and you can use it. You don't have to know every single, like everything comes with code stubs now. So it's really changed the way, what core competencies or skills you're looking for. And the number one definitely should be problem solving. Can you take a problem, apply computational thinking to it, break it down into its smallest grain, solve the, at the lowest grain and then build it back up? That's core to what you should be looking for. And the data clearly shows us that when we talk to the 40,000 hiring managers or developers that we've talked to that are part of both on being hired as developers or hiring developers. And so there's a lot of problem solving should be the number one competency you're looking for, and of course matching it to what type of problems are you going to be solving or are trying to solve that you're going to bring on a group of developers for. Language proficiency definitely comes second, debugging, system design, and then performance optimization. That's sort of where the stack ranking goes in terms of core competencies.
Yep. And I think you've got a good story of where VMware was having a really hard time filling a particular role. What was it about that role that created the challenges for the description they were using?
It's actually, even VMware, even I did this when we were at EMC, and we were very specifically looking for, you must know like Cloud Foundry, because we had used Cloud Foundry as a sort of our platform. And we were like, you must know that, and you must know our tools. And we just couldn't for months trying to find someone. And there were other factors too, but that became sort of our determinant. And the same thing with VMware and vSphere. It's pretty much the same, looking for very specific skills around a very specific set of tools and platforms. And that sort of, when that becomes the bar, and that's all you're looking for, or that's what you've described, using traditional ways of using keyword searches or of resumes, you just couldn't find the right people because they don't have the number of years of experience specifically in a tool. The minute we changed that and asked the VMware team and said, it's not the tool, it's the specific problem set that we're looking for that you can solve. I don't care what tool you're specialized in. It completely changed. And it was going to a more, here are the type of problems we're looking to solve. Here are the skills we're looking for. Your ability to do scripting, regardless of language it is in, or what flavor of Linux you're in. That became sort of secondary. It completely changed and opened up a massive pool of great talent for us to go after, including folks that did not come from traditional computer science backgrounds, who were self-taught or went to boot camps. And that was sort of the pivot or the shift that we saw, and as did VMware with us as well.
Okay. And so as people look at bringing in the different skill sets, how does that change the interview process?
Sure. So that's a great one. I think it's really important that, and the way our construct at HackerRank, and I think this is something that we share with all of our customers, is around the technical interview. Really look at what is the outcome from the technical interview that you're looking for. And if you sort of break it down, that will then help you drive what type of questions should you be asking in those interviews so that you get the right signals for the skill, right? So at its core level, you want to look for problem solving. So if you're looking for problem solving skills, you're looking for correctness and optimality in those. When you get to, and so that works really well for early talent, intern programs, new grad, 2 years of work experience. That's the level of skill set that you'll be looking for. Take a problem, give them a problem or give them a challenge, which is a problem solving, have them solve a problem. And I'll show you an example very specifically for DevOps in a few minutes. Based on the skills you're looking for, and you're testing for correctness, so the ability to get a naive solution, and then how optimal is that solution. And then as you go further up the experience level, you go more into real world challenges where you can say, let me take something from my own code base, or let me make something that is very, very like what we're doing in production and ask a candidate to go solve for it. And that, again, you're looking for not just correctness and optimality, but you're also looking for code structure. You're looking for the debugging skills, because that's what a lot of what they'll be doing. And then what is their test-driven deployment? Is there good test case coverage? Ask them to actually write a test case. And those will give you the right signals for those individuals. And then once you bring them on to sort of the next round, or when you're doing sort of an on-site, that's when you can go into system design, right? And again, you're looking for correctness, optimization to scale, and then you can go more into sort of knowledge of technologies, queuing, databases, all of the tools that you're looking for. Those are the kind of things that you can get as part of sort of the system design part of the interview, right? So the depth of the language proficiency, frameworks, ability to leverage your frameworks, what's their code readability, how do they work together in sort of using pair programming. These are all sort of common attributes across this anatomy of a technical interview. The next piece that we sort of take this interview, this technical interview, and the way it manifests itself in how do you go about thinking on how you're going to assess skills, or when you're scaling up your teams, how are you going to hire, and as part of hiring is how are you going to assess for these skills. Our recommended best practices is to put a framework together. Use ours, build one, taking ours as sort of a baseline. And what you have to think of is the role that you're hiring for, so DevOps for today, and then what's the different experience levels. And then based on those two vectors, what we want to optimize for is what's the type of challenge. So as I showed you in my previous slide around the technical interview, is if it's someone that's early talent, it's problem solving. As you go up experience levels, the type of questions or the type of challenges that you'll ask and the signals they'll give you is more real world. And then what's the duration of the challenge? Giving them, how long should the challenge be? For someone who's coming straight out of school, you're used to competitive programming, asking them to do a coding challenge within 60 to 75 minutes is pretty much straightforward. That's how they've learned. They'll do it for you. But as you go up to more experienced candidates or more experienced developers, you want to be conscious of the fact that they have other obligations, may have a full job, they may be passive, is give them more time. The problem that you're going to give them is a lot more complex. The keyboard time, be sensitive to how much time they actually spend on the keyboard, but give them more time to actually think through the problem, deconstruct it, and then construct it back. And definitely positioning is really important, making sure that for more experienced candidates, more passive candidates, you want to have the hiring manager spend 10 or 15 minutes with them on the phone, help them understand the construct of the problem, why you're asking them to take a coding challenge, but more importantly, also help them understand that it's not just throwaway work, that you will be bringing in the code that they submit as part of the take-home challenge into their on-site, where you'll give them an opportunity to walk through their thought process. It's an important skill that you're looking for as well. And then you can add more constraints and you can do pair programming together. So that continuity is important, so they know that it's not just, I'm going to go spend the next 2 days working on this and I'm going to get some score and then you're going to throw it away. So that's an important sort of part to think through. So please use our framework. It's there for you. It's available to you. This is not proprietary to us. It's something that we've developed working now with 1,200 customers at massive scale. So have a framework in place, use ours, or take ours and build from there. And then how the framework actually sort of manifests itself is building out an assessment rubric. Based on that framework, pick the role, really understand the skills that you're looking for. So for DevOps, here are the skills that we put together. We've got this for several different roles, but I only picked the one for DevOps today. Problem solving, automation, code testing, networking, good understanding of CI/CD and how that works. Of course, language proficiency and debugging. And then the experience levels, I've just used generic terms. I used to use DevOps engineer, senior, principal. You may have different ways of how you do this. A lot of companies, especially large enterprise, you have lots of different bands, 10, 11 bands that you have. A lot of those are more salary driven. If you were to really sort of concatenate those, you'll come down to 3 levels from an experience point and then skills. And so the type of questions you ask based on experience levels are different. There's difficulty levels and then the type of questions you ask. So putting this rubric together or using ours again, this is something that is available to you. We'll set you up for, here's the role that we're looking to hire for, here are the skills that we're looking for, and then based on the experience level, what are the type of questions we should ask so that we can get the right signals for. And that sort of the framework and then the rubric helps you, and then we start going, actually, let's go build a test or an assessment, and then actually then go through the motions of having our candidates take it. So the next thing I actually wanted to show you how this sort of theory of these slides, what it actually manifests itself when you start using HackerRank and how it will actually work. So I'm going to flip over real quick in the HackerRank. You should be able to see HackerRank for work. This is the HackerRank for Work product. I've actually built out a test already. And let's go actually look at the test so you can see the type of questions. There are 4 questions in here. This is just picking from our library of questions. There's 3 DevOps questions, and then there's a approximate solution. There's points, and then for each of these, you can actually go in and see anyone that's used this question in their test. There's a lot of data that's available, so we'll pick the one which is create a reverse proxy. You can go view, and you'll see how that question, or this is essentially the question, how it's been built. Here's a problem statement. It's for 75 points. It's already been tagged, so it shows you what different skills, what difficulty level it is. There's a problem statement for it. There's any advanced settings in terms of they are going to get a virtual machine. So the candidate, we're actually going to spin up a VM for them. So what operating system do you want them to have? And then do you want to give them root access? They're going to have to SSH tunnel into the VM to actually solve the problem. And then any scripts, setup scripts and any check or solve scripts, we've already pre-populated these for you, but it's important that you have scripts to define the behavior of the task already built in. I'm going to go back to the test and also show you what some data around others that have used this question, other customers. There's a lot of insights that's available to you as part of that. It shows you who authored it, that was us. How many attempts have been made on that question. Again, remember, a test, think of it just as a folder or a container of questions. Every customer of ours that's hiring for DevOps may use this question, but may use this in a combination with other questions, so their test will be unique. But those that have used this question, it's showing you what the median score is, what the attempt time is, so you know how much time you've given them. Is that sufficient? It's giving you the score distribution. So you're seeing it's a fairly difficult question for people that have attempted it. They're not scoring too well on it. So again, we have to decide, is this the right type of signal that you're looking for? And then, of course, you see usage over time. But there is a lot more insights that's available to you for each of these. So going back to the actual test, we're going to go look into this delete file, which is actually creating a chef recipe. And then we'll look at the reverse proxy as well. So here's the chef recipe one. Go create a chef recipe. It's just to delete a file. And then, here are, again, the same settings that you want to give them and any scripts. So I had someone on the team actually go take the test. So I'm going to show you what they did like. I completed it 12 days ago. I've miserably failed at it, as you can see. But Darsh actually took the test. He got 40%. I'm going to have a conversation with Darsh. I expect him to have aced the test, but I think he done this more from an example. So we can go in and actually look at, once you've invited Darsh to take the test, he's taken the test, we will actually evaluate and score it. So based on the test cases, that's where the points are assigned. And then this is the view that you will have as a hiring manager to see how Darsh did on the test. So there's a summary view. It's telling you overall he scored 100 out of the 250 available points. And then how long did he actually take? We'd given him a lot more time, but he finished it in 19 minutes and 49 seconds. His work experience, etc. These are information that if you would ask him to fill in, he would have done that for you. You can look at, based on all the tags that I showed you in the questions, how he's performed at that level. So this is at the different skills that each of the question is. And then for each of the questions, you can actually go into a lot more detail and see a detailed view. So I'm going to go look at the delete file, which was create the chef recipe. He spent all of 7 minutes. He nailed it, so he did well. He got 50 out of 50, so he passed all the test cases. And so here I can go see what exactly is, let me scroll down to the one where you're actually seeing a whole task check log for the one on the chef recipe. You can actually even go play it back. So I'm going to go play the recording. And here you're going to see keystroke by keystroke. We've recorded every keystroke that Darsh did as part of this test. And so you can play this completely back to see, okay, he did have to go SSH tunnel into the VM, and then what steps did he take to go complete the task, which was the delete file using a chef recipe. So that's one example. And then let's go look at another example on his test. He did 2 out of the 4. So I'm going to go look at the one for approximate solution. We can definitely we'll go spend some time and see what happened for the reverse proxy. But on the large response, you can actually play back. So every time he run his code, you can actually do a playback. So I'm going to go all the way back, and you can actually see every time he did run, we've captured it, and that's available for you to play back as well.
The importance behind this feature, just to highlight, is as you're having candidates move through this process, not only do you get to see their code quality, code structure, and thought process, but you also see exactly the time that they're taking, the number of attempts they use to run the code, and also if they're bouncing in and out of the platforms, checking for plagiarism.
Yes, absolutely. So there's several things that we'll do. So here you're seeing all the test cases that we had, each test case, what the score was, how much time they took, how much memory did they use, so how optimal is their code. We will check for plagiarism as well. So if we find, you're seeing that output or the diff. If we find 2 or more candidates that have we use MOS is the algorithm that we use, and we're looking for similarity in string and syntax. If we find a 70% match or higher, we will highlight that for you. If we find we crawl for your questions to see if they've been open sourced, we'll let you know if the question has been open sourced as well. There's a lot of rich data that just beyond the score, how they did they pass or fail their test cases. You're also looking for traits, right? Are these the kind of traits or coding style that you're looking for to have on your team? So there's a lot of rich data that you can get to see as part of it.
And so there's a question that's popped up, which is, here's a good point to address it. It's around the fact that there are less and less people willing to take a test. Oftentimes they get numerous offers that don't require them to jump through hoops. So what's the honest hit rate when it requiring a test?
Right. So that's a great question. Our benchmark is a 70% attempt to invite. So for everyone that you invited to take an assessment, we see our customers are able to get 70% or higher. That's our benchmark right now, which is great. And I agree that there is definitely software is eating the world. So everyone's becoming a software company. As a developer today, you've got so many options out there for you. But I think what I mentioned before is making sure that you position this correctly. If you're reaching out to a candidate and all you've had is one conversation with them, and then you just send them the test, or without a conversation, you just invite them to the test, they're not going to take it. They want to know more about it. spending some time building the test, use our library questions for sure, but make sure they've got context so they see actually what type of problems you're trying to solve. That's what will get a developer passionate around it. And then they'll want to showcase their skills rather than just saying, hey, let me go look at what you've done in Git. I do a lot of hobby projects in Git, but if you give me a problem to solve that will also give me an indication of the type of work I'll be doing when I come join your company, I'm going to take the extra effort to do it and show you how well I can do it versus taking something very generic. So that's really important. The other thing that's worked is give them an option. Do you want to do this in your own time? Or give them a week and say, go solve for it over the week. Again, be conscious about how much time you're going to ask them to actually spend on the keyboard, but give them the option to come in or do it as part of a pair programming session using CodePair. And what we find is most people will tend to say, I'd rather do it over my own time versus I now have to schedule, carve out an hour, make sure I'm available, all of that good stuff. But it's really important that one, it's positioned correctly, and it's positioned by by both recruiting as well as the hiring manager, and there's enough context around what you ask them to do. Don't ask someone to do basic data structure, algorithmic type of questions when they're applying for a DevOps job, right? That's not the kind of work they'll be doing. The last time they did this was probably when they were in school and they'll have to go crack open a book, but it's not relevant. If you're using Chef or Puppet or Ansible, give them a challenge that is around those, right? Ask them to go build a Chef recipe. Pick something from your own code base and give them a challenge which already has bugs built into it, and ask them to go rebuild it, right? So go review the code, go refactor it. A build could be failing. I use this a lot. I've done this a lot, but I'll take one of my builds that were failing and actually give it to them and say, hey, go review, go through the log files, go figure out why the build is failing, go fix it, and go refactor it, and then that's the test case, right? And that's the type of work they'll be doing when they come on board. That's exactly the son of a representation, and you'll see a very different outcome from taking assessments. Cool. So Laura, you mentioned timeline. Yeah, we do a very complete timeline. That's the view that you're seeing right now. Darsh spent, how much time did he spend on question 1? On question 2, he was spent some time on it, then he went away, and you can see there's a gap. So did he spend this time Googling the answer, or did he actually spend time trying to solve it? That's all available to you. There's a complete event list. So there's a lot of detail which will show you, literally all the time that was spent by the candidate in the server, in our servers, in HackerRank, and what they were doing. So, and it's okay that they, went away. So for question 2, started doing it, did a few attempts, then decided to go solve question 3, and then come back to finish question 2, which is absolutely fine. But this will give you a kind of indicator of how is this individual actually spending their time solving these problems.
Okay. And so, given the gaps in real life, developers will use all of the resources available to them online. So how do we control for cheating?
Sure. So you're right. So this is why we give you all this data about the timeline, so you can see that while I may have stopped working on question 2, I didn't spend all the time away from HackerRank actually going looking for the answer. I actually spend the time solving for problem 3. So you don't get that like, hey, what were you doing? But there's definitely gaps within where you'll see where I was not in HackerRank. So that's potentially that I'm out there looking for the answer, which is fine. And that's a call that we need to make. You can sort of make this go full screen so that they don't go out of your screen. But that is a judgment call that you have to make. As developers, we don't write, like I mentioned before, every string and syntax anymore. You don't need to do it. So let them, that's great. They're showing you how resourceful they are, that they can go get the answer, which has already been done before, and it's elegant and it works. They'll go use it. So I don't necessarily ding candidates for going and being resourceful. I think that's great. But again, that's something that the hiring team needs to decide. There are controls in place in the product that you can turn on. Not a great candidate experience when you turn on a lot of controls. You want to let them use their own IDE. For all you know, all Darsh did was take this and bring this into his own IDE rather than use the one that's available to you from within HackerRank. And that's fine. He's got all his libraries set up. It's an environment he's comfortable with. Great that he's doing it within his own environment and is able to solve the challenge. Okay, awesome. So great questions. Keep them coming. I'd love for this to be interactive and more answering your questions than just presenting to you. So that was more about the test and the candidate experience, as well as how, and actually I should show you what the candidate experience will look like as well for this test. I showed you the actual test, the questions. I showed you what the candidate report will look like. I'm just going to hit this try test button. As a hiring manager, it's important that you do this before you send it. We actually, as a best practice, require that once you build this test, you actually have 20 of your own engineers that you recently hired for the role to take the test. That calibration is really important. I used to be notorious for choosing really hard questions because I want the best, but then my own engineers would take 3 hours to do it and then fail on it, and I'd be okay, that's not fair. I can't expect candidates to do it. Or I'd choose really easy questions because I was in a hurry and I just picked the easiest things, and they'd be like, okay, this is not going to give you the signals we're looking for. So it's important that we have a calibration session, that have your engineers take it. They'll give you a lot of anecdotal feedback as well and say, yeah, this test is good. It represents the type of work we do, or it doesn't. So this is just a way of doing it. I'm just going to see if I can take this. Again, these are all customizable fields. I'm going to say I don't have enough experience, but just to give you a sense of what this would look like. And essentially what's happening now is we are spinning up the servers. And this time that it takes for us to spin up the VMs for the candidate doesn't get counted against that time. Their clock truly starts ticking, once the actual VM is launched, and then they can SSH into it. So that's essentially their experience. This will take a few minutes. We'll let it run. And then you'll actually see what that experience looks like.
And so while this is spinning up, going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the core competencies employers look for when filling an open role, so what do you optimize for? Fast bootstrapping of a candidate who meets those problem-solving skills, problem-solving mindset, or versus a longer-term assignment?
Yeah, so I would say time would definitely is not a good element. How fast someone codes or writes a script, sort of immaterial. Definitely, I would say, given you want to be conscious about the level of effort you're asking the candidate to take, maybe bootstrapping a solution is good, and it's a good representation of it. So that's how I would look at it. Give them a problem statement that they can go solve within a finite amount of time, and is not requiring massive amounts of think. Mm-hmm. And then things like system design, more architecture. We've got drawing tools within the product, but that's better suited for when you're sort of face-to-face or doing an on-site.
Okay. So how's our platform looking?
Yeah, so I'm going to have too many tabs open, so let me go find you the right tab. Mm-hmm. Should be all of these. All right. Just to be conscious of time, I will go find those tabs, but that essentially should give you an idea of it's nothing. What you'll see is a VM spun up, and the candidate has the SSH instructions that they have the login instructions to SSH into the VM, okay, and I have to go solve for it.
All right, and so another question that's come in is asking what were the qualifications that recruiters and hiring managers are looking for before an on-site. And so the top three things they were looking for was previous work experience. People are looking for people who meet their baseline requirements, followed by years of experience, and then the third one being those personal projects or self-taught, self-education type activities. And one of the things that, as you're going through the evaluation process of candidates to consider is how to remove some of that unconscious bias. And that's something that HackerRank does really well, especially for a lot of these junior level positions. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of customers who are using HackerRank to screen candidates up front before even looking at a resume. In order to submit a resume for a role, they go through a basic assessment.
Yeah, they do, especially for early talent. The resume doesn't tell you much. My work experience as a new grad or someone who's about to grad from a CS program is pretty much the experience I have studying for the 4 years. Not necessarily some real world experience. I may have done an internship, but giving them the assessment and then, to your point, taking out unconscious bias. We actually recommend, we've got this where you want to take out even the email address. It saves a lot. If I use gaurav.varma@gmail.com, you can pretty much deduce a few things with it in terms of, male, Indian origin, all of that good stuff. So you can actually obfuscate all of that. And at least from the hiring side, all you should be looking at, do they have the skills that you needed? So if you've got a good, well-calibrated test, it should give you that. The code that they've submitted, that should be what you're using to assess, do you want to move someone to the next round, which could then be a on-site round. But this is how all of our customers are sort of leveraging HackerRank up front, definitely from an early talent perspective. As you get to more experienced candidates, HackerRank is introduced as part of the process, not up front. There's definitely some more work to be done up front, especially if they're passive, in terms of selling to them why they should come work for you as a company, what some of your engineering principles are, making sure they've got a chance to look at your engineering blog where they see what type of problems are you solving, what type of technologies you're using, what's your methodologies. All of those things are important to developers today to know what they're going to be doing.
Okay. And so really in conclusion, and we'll move into more questions from the audience here in just a moment. So it really is important when you're looking to scale your teams today. There's so many tools and this new emergence of software and data integration that help people expand their talent pool and bring in truly top talent. So conclusion number one is to truly expand your team today. Look at what you can do, what your organization can do to move beyond the resume, incorporating those skills assessments.
Yeah. So yeah, move beyond resumes for sure. Move beyond language proficiency. That's sort of becoming less and less material, as we've mentioned before. Everyone is self-taught, more and more self-taught now. Go is one of the most popular languages today. There's no school that teaches it, right? You just go to Google and learn it. It's their language. You may not be using it at work every day as yet, because at work we may not have moved on to using Go. But if there's a project where we're thinking about, hey, then we want to start using Go, you'll be surprised how many engineers already within your team or your developers already know Go, right? So the only way you can assess for that is assess for skills and not just for language, right? So if you say, here's a problem, a coding challenge, go pick the language of choice. Don't enforce that you can only pick Java, you can only do it in C or in Python or whatever. You'll be amazed what you'll see in terms of skills that you already have that an individual has. And then the third thing that's like super important is improve the candidate experience. This I can't emphasize more on is give them a challenge with the right context and make it as real world as possible. And this is where it's really where rubber meets the road, is making sure that we spend the time developing the right type of coding challenge that's truly representative of the type of work and showcases the company and the type of problems you're solving. We all want to solve interesting and tough problems. That's what's going to be that's as much of a selling point that here, go take this assessment. If that coding challenge in the assessment is with the right context and is a real world problem, you'll be amazed how much of a selling tool it becomes in itself than just, I'm going to assess your skills.
Yeah, exactly. And by using this type of skills assessment, you create a very consistent experience for all of your candidates. Right. So not only is it delivering a great candidate experience, but you're also meeting compliance regulations. So how? Yeah,
absolutely. So this is things like using, validation, making sure that there is no adverse impact, making sure it's clean and consistent, there is consistency. So if you're hiring DevOps in a company where you've got multiple product lines or multiple business units, should each business unit have their own assessment? If you're looking for a DevOps engineer with X number of years of experience, and then each team or candidates have a very different experience depending on the business unit or the product team that they're interviewing for, versus can you standardize that experience and say, listen, at least 80% of the skills are going to be common, right? You're all going to need the exact same skills or very similar skills across all these product units or business units for a DevOps engineer. You may be using different languages or different tools. One team may be using Chef, the other one's using Puppet. One has a Jenkins pipeline versus one using something else for CI or CD. But those things you can always assess for, but that's 20%. 80% is consistent. So if you come together as a council and build out an assessment, and you can then strategize and come up with, hey, we're going to be very consistent with the core skills that we're looking for anyone that's joining our company or our teams. And then each team is allowed to add sort of one or two questions that's specific to their team. you'll see a lot of consistency. And then that also allows you to say, if you need sort of individuals, or you need some capacity that one team is needed for another team because they're doing some massive push, or their ship rate is getting really high, they're shipping something big, you can always move them around because you've assessed them on the same skill level, right? Versus it was all custom and it was all unique. So there's a lot that can be driven both by bringing in consistency. Yes, of course, HR compliance, that's a big theme as well.
Okay. And so in continuing on that theme with the consistency theme, really what we found is that when candidates have a consistent experience, even if they don't receive a job offer, they'll be much more likely to recommend your organization to their peers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The developer community is very close-knit, yes, and we're very vocal, and they will talk about you and their experience, whether they'll do it on Glassdoor or they'll do it on Stack Overflow, or wherever we all hang out. They will, on Reddit, you name it, they will talk about it. So you're absolutely right. Or even if I don't get the offer, I will still, if my experience was great, I'll talk about it. And as a matter of fact, at the end of taking the assessment, we actually ask the candidate for their experience, and they get to score you, and they're scoring you on 3 things, right? They're scoring us and you on 3 things. One is the environment, so HackerRank, like did autocomplete work and all of those things. They'll make comments, so they'll tell you about the IDE and that experience. They will score us based on the content. So was the content relevant? Was it a context? I'm applying for a DevOps position, but I'm being asked a front-end question, like that's not relevant. So they'll call you out on it and us out on it. And then the third thing is the duration, right? Did you give me enough time, or you're giving me 60 minutes, but this thing takes 3 hours to actually go right? Not including the time I need to go actually think and deconstruct the problem. So they're very vocal. They give you a sort of a star rating, and then they can give you free-form comments. We take it really seriously. 4.2 out of 5 is our current benchmark. Anything south of that, even 4.1, we actually will go, we read all of the comments regardless of what score has been given. It's available to you as part of the candidate report. We review all of it. We reach out to candidates. We work with our customers, the hiring team, the manager, as well as the recruiters, to make sure that we are responding to candidates when they're giving us this feedback. So it's super critical.
Yeah, and also in that line, we talk about using the IDE to deliver the assessment and creating that consistent experience throughout the interview process. So it's a much better experience for them if they're able to work in an environment that is in line with what they would be doing in real life versus trying to problem solve on a whiteboard.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're notorious, I think, in the industry for doing this. It was funny, every time I would have a DevOps engineer come on site for an interview, and then we would ask them to write some script on a whiteboard. They would do it, and then they would turn around, and every single one, before they were leaving, they'd say, "You do know the only time I write script on a whiteboard is when I interview. Never before, never after." And you just be like, "Wow, we got to change this." And that's how I found HackerRank. I was looking for a better tool than using whiteboarding, but you're absolutely right. That's a very unnatural thing that we ask developers to do as part of the interview process. And so we've taken a lot of effort in making sure that we have IDEs built in. We support 40+ languages, all the libraries. So it is as much of as having the same experience that they do on their own machine within the web IDE of HackerRank.
All right, and so audience members, if you do have any questions, please send them in. We'll be happy to address those now. One other thing I'd like to point out is if you visit research.hackerrank.com, we have a piece that we completed this year, the 2018 Developer Skills Report, and it provides a lot of the background into some of the statistics that we shared during today's program. And so let's see here, we've got a question that is ticked in. So what ATS systems does HackerRank integrate with?
Sure. So we integrate with, I think, 8 or 9 of them out there natively. So we've done integration sort of partnerships with them. Lever, Greenhouse, iSIMS, JobWhite, Smart Recruiters, Taleo. I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2, so I apologize for that. Workday Recruit is something that we're working on our certification. We've already done it with a couple of customers. So yeah, there's a deep integration that we've done with all of these ATS systems. The recruiters don't have to essentially even leave the ATS. The way the integration is done, you can actually move a candidate into a stage called HackerRank, and then you can go. It'll give you access to all the assessments that are available. Pick the one that you want to send them. If everything is already configured once within HackerRank, we will send them the invite once the candidate actually takes the assessment. And the report's generated, we will push back the score and a deep link to the detailed report that I showed you. So you can go straight from there and deep link back into HackerRank to actually view the code that they've submitted. And then if you want to, the next step is you want to set up a code pair or code pair session, so the pair programming session, whether on-site or remote, you can do it all within the ATS itself. So that integration is deep. And we continue working on it. And there's lots of different things that we're working on with them in terms of how data gets exchanged between the two. There's a lot of insights that we've developed. We've recently launched this tech talent matrix. We look at the customer response scorecard that we built, an assessment quality scorecard. That's data that we have. And then now we're working with our ATS partners to take outcome data and then enrich that even more with that scorecard. So you want to look at the entire funnel right from the point in time that you've sourced a candidate, you invite them to take an assessment, all the way through to offer. So enriching our data set, which takes you all the way through taking the assessment and then bringing in outcome data, we're now able to give you a much deeper view. And it's not just blunt force like how fast am I hiring, but it's 15 metrics just alone on the candidate's response side, as well as another 15 on the assessment side, where you can get very fine-grained into looking at, are you getting the outcomes you're looking for by assessing for skills? And then some early warning indicators of, is the assessment or your sourcing strategy starting to degrade, which they will over time, but can we make some small changes and give you a lot more, continue giving you the outcomes you're looking for?
Yeah. And so on that line, so can you back up results from a group to create a standard baseline or benchmarks at which to assess against?
Absolutely. So that's the calibration piece. And there's two calibrations that we do, that we recommend and we sort of work with our customers in doing. So one is create the test, get it calibrated by engineers internally who you recently hired for those roles, based on how they perform, score distribution, time that they're taking. That will give you a sense of, have we got the right difficulty in the questions? Are they the right questions? Are we giving our candidates enough time? So that's the first level of calibration. Once you've done that, make the changes. And then once you start actually giving it to candidates, after a statistically valid sort of cohort has taken that, you want to do another round of calibration. So look at score distribution, look at the time they're taking. Say you've given 90 minutes for the test and everyone is taking 89 minutes. We want to go evaluate and say, are they taking 89 minutes because they can, or because they're actually having to literally, keyboard their way to the last minute? We should go add 10 more minutes to it, right? And if everyone is failing, not good. I've just choked your pipeline. That means the test is too hard. If everyone is passing, not even better, because now you're essentially, everyone's coming through. What's the point of even having the assessment? Because you're no longer screening anyone out. So that balance of screening in and screening out is really important. Setting up your cutoff score, that's again a function of calibration. So yeah, those are two really important stages of calibration that are critical to set. So you have the baseline, and then that's how you're going to be assessing everybody else.
Okay. All right, and we have somebody asking about our upcoming programs. So if you visit hackerrank.com/resources, you'll find a variety of marketing assets and information on HackerRank, as well as thought leadership and best practices for the tech talent industry. And we also list our upcoming programs. So on-demand programs, research, blogs. If you're really interested in staying up to date with the latest news, please be sure to follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter under the HackerRank handle. And let's see here if we have any other questions coming in as we go along. Okay, does HackerRank integrate with Zoho?
We have not integrated with Zoho, not natively, but we have a very robust set of APIs that are available. They're public. Almost all of our functions are available as an API. It's REST APIs, JSON. So yeah, you can absolutely set up the integration. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. All right, and audience members, we'll give you just one more moment, but in the meantime, let's see here. We've got one here. Do we have templated exams so we can do a skill assessment on the current team? So
yeah, absolutely. We have a library of over 1,400 questions, and we keep adding to the library. So you do have a library within HackerRank to leverage. The library is structured by role, by experience level, difficulty, different skills. They're all tagged, so you can search through it. It's really easy to get started. Use the library. Our recommendation is use the library as a way to get started. You can use the questions as is. I showed insights so you can see how others that have taken the question or the coding question, how they performed, or use this as a template. Take our question, you can clone it, and then you can use that as a template and then build your own question on top.
Okay, fantastic. And it looks like that might be it. Oh, one more. Yeah, okay, so that looks like that might be it in terms of audience member questions. So, Gaurav, thank you so much for walking us through all of this today. I appreciate the insight that you bring.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and hope everyone enjoyed this, and looking forward to talking to each of you one-on-one and getting you wildly successful at HackerRank in the future.
Just a quick reminder to the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you miss any or all of the event, you'll be able to access it on demand. We will be sending out an email post-webinar that will enable you, it will have a link to it that will enable you to access the webinar. Also, the webinar is going to be on the DevOps.com website, so you can always look there. Just go under the webinars tab on demand, and should be there waiting for you. And while you're at DevOps.com, please feel free to take a look at some of the other webinars that we have, both upcoming and on demand. Hopefully there'll be one or two that pique your interest. Laura Guntran and Gaurav Verma, thank you both for giving such a great presentation today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
All right, great. Well, have a good day, everybody. I'm signing off. This is Charlene O'Hanlon. Bye.